Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday Working Lunch series. It's really good to see you all. Please say hi in the chat box, and if I could just ask you just to mute your microphone if you have just joined us in the last few seconds. I'm Dave Crew, Head of Business Growth and Employer Partnership at Weston College Group, and I'll be your host today, and we'll have our guest speaker, Philippa Haynes, which I will introduce shortly. So the Wednesday Working Lunch series, it was created as a result of lockdown with our partners Western Chamber of Commerce and North Somerset Enterprise Agency. You'll know from working with Weston College that we do believe in partnership working, and we decided to create this online series, informal and informative, to allow our employer partners and business partners to jump online at 1 o'clock every week, focus on a key theme, get involved in the conversation. We're a further and higher education college based in North Somerset, and that's a picture of Weston-super-Mare there. So Wednesday Working Lunch series for us has been a huge success. We've had nearly 1,000 registrations across the whole series, which is incredible. So it was really good to see you all here today. So Weston College, we're going to be talking about brand ethos vision today, and we have a very simple mission statement at the college, which is creating brighter futures. We're highly ambitious for our learners, and you can see some of the specialisms that we have at the college here on your screen. A specialist centre of SEND, Special Education Needs and Disabilities. We deliver over 2,000 apprenticeships every year, and we've been recognised for that. And in terms of leadership and well-being, are real agendas for Weston College. And I've got some news, some announcements. A couple of weeks ago, our principal, Dr. Paul Phillips, CBE, was recognised as the leader of the future on the national stage at the UK Business Awards for his work guiding a £65 million turnover business through COVID-19 and setting us up for the future. And in addition, we were recognised for our work, a lot of hard work going into the well-being body and mind initiative that we have at the college, which has been important more so now probably than it's ever been. And also, just to let you know that I'll touch on this later, going live this week, we have our COVID-19 Recovery Hub website, which will launch, because I am aware there's lots of different funding incentives and announcements, and colleges like Weston-super-Mare and Weston College will be supporting employers through COVID recovery. How we do that is highlighted here. So please get into contact with us if you'd like to discuss any of the agendas that we are working on to support businesses, and I'll cover those just before I close the session today. So talking about today, this is the point where I hand over to our guest speaker, Philippa Haynes, Director at Insight 101. I've known Philippa for a couple of years now, a trusted contact, and I think this is a real key issue of interest because branding, vision, ethos of a business and how that translates to employees and our customers is critical to the success of any business, I believe. But at this stage, I will hand over to Philippa and stop sharing my screen. Over to you, Philippa.
Thank you very much, Dave. Let me just get my screen up and running. Can everybody see that? Okay, great stuff. So first of all, thank you very much, Dave, for inviting me. And of course, thank you, Weston College. Yes, we've known each other for a couple of years, and I have to say that the college is outstanding in so many ways, and it's a real pleasure for me to talk today. I'd like to say thank you as well to Emma, who's going to do the technical side, and hopefully those polls will come through well. Thank you, Emma. And thank you too to my special guest, Mike Crook, who I will be interviewing in a while because he has some great insights to share with us today. So I'm going to be talking about defining your brand for the new normal, and I'm sure there will be lots of people grimacing when they hear that new normal term, which seems to be on everybody's lips these days like unprecedented times. But I couldn't think of a better way of talking about it, so forgive me. But what I'm going to talk about really is the importance of having a brand vision and the structure that that gives you post-lockdown, both for you, if you're a business leader, but also for your staff. And of course, happy staff, focused staff leads to great customer service and a great customer experience. So let me introduce myself, if my slides will move, which they don't seem to be doing. Hold on a minute. Great. So my name is Philippa Haynes from Insight 101. As Dave said, I have known him for around 2 years. I have been heading up my business now for 3 years. It is a brand strategy consultancy. What does that mean? Well, for me, it's about bringing meaning to the lives of many. And by that, I mean individuals, whether we are working or at play, always look for value, always look for meaning in what we do, who we're with, what we buy into, whether that's a product or service. So it's that extra value that we want to serve up, not only to our customers and our clients, but also to our staff. And that is what Insight 101 is all about. Now, I've spent 30 years, I can't believe 30 years, working for some of the world's major brands, Levi's, Ford Motor Company, Tata Global Beverages, which is Tetley Tea to you and I, etc., etc. And I've also worked for Ogilvy, which is an advertising agency. So I understand the importance of brand and brand messaging and how that can inspire, attract, and retain both your staff and your customers and clients. So it's all about loyalty. So I'm going to talk today about what we can all do to ensure that we are fit for the future, because lockdown has given us many challenges, of course, but now we're looking at how can we learn from those and what can we do moving forward to ensure that we have as much certainty as we can, even though we are certainly in uncertain times and will continue to be so for quite a long time, I'm sure. So today I'm going to talk about why brand is important. I think it's important to set that text, that context, and how does it drive perception, not only customer driven, but employee as well. I'm also going to talk about how this relates to you in the audience, because not all of us are global brands, but it does impact all of us, and it's important for us all to think about. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can do in the next 90 days. And I think 90 days seems like a reasonable amount of time, 3 months, to think about how to move forward. So that is the agenda. I'll be talking for about 30 minutes. Included in that is a little chat with Mike Crook, who I will introduce in a while. But before we do that, I would like a bit of audience participation, please. We have a poll, which we have 2 questions, one now and one a little bit later, which are a bit of fun, but also will help us think about who's in the audience and what our core issues are and where we are on the brand journey. So first of all, Emma, could you bring up the poll, please? How would you describe your brand? First option is excellent, clear and well defined. Second is not bad, but it needs more work. Third option is hazy, but we haven't done that much work on it yet. And fourth, what is brand? And yes, that's a little bit of a bit of fun there. But equally, there will be those people within this audience who haven't thought about it. Maybe they are a single business owner and that has not been the primary point of focus over the last few months and years. So please just write your answers there. There are no names attributed. Just please submit, and we will have a chat about the results as they come through. And Emma, I'm assuming that they will come up automatically, or you will make it known as and when they become available.
Yeah, just waiting for a few more responses and then I'll share the data.
Okay, great. Just spontaneous, don't need to think about it too much. How are we looking, Emma?
I'm just going to pop them up on screen now.
Brilliant. So actually there are a lot of people, 43%, who feel that their brand is in excellent condition, it's clear and well defined, and that is brilliant news. Another 50%, not bad, but it needs more work, so that's interesting. Now is the time to do that. And a few people who are a little bit hazy, and that's okay as well. I would be amazed, shocked and deeply impressed if there were 100% saying excellent. So I think that we have a nice spread of results there. And it'd be interesting to understand later on how those people who thought excellent now, what they think at the end of the session. Okay, so great stuff. Let's move on. So what I'm going to talk about first of all is, why is brand so important? And I think it's really important to set the context for this webinar, because brand is everywhere around us. There are lots of messages, good and bad. And of course, in times of stress and difficulty like we've experienced during lockdown, there are some brands that win and some that lose. And I'm sure we've all heard about that in the media over the last few months. So quite simply, what is brand then? Well, brand is what we want our customers and our employees to feel. And yes, it's encapsulated within this image, which I'm deadly serious about, to be honest. We want our customers and our employees to feel inspired, to feel really happy with their purchase, or really happy with what they've bought into or where they're working. And it's all about experience, isn't it? So if we have a brand and if we have definition, then we can serve up an experience based on that. And these days, there are so many choices in the world, so many products, so many services, and so many jobs, let's face it, that we need to be able to make people feel like this as much as possible. So a very serious message behind what is a relatively light-hearted slide there. But of course, you can't have an experience if you don't have definition. And it does matter, because actually there are several studies that are out there that say, first of all, that in 2020 the experience of brand, whether as an employee or a customer, is more important than the product or service itself, and particularly more important than the price. And I think that's a very interesting stat for everybody in the room, because often people are prepared to pay more for something that makes them feel great. Now, from an employee perspective, you do get greater profitability if your staff are happy, aligned and focused. They're more productive, they're more focused, they're happier, and that translates into just great customer service. So that 21% there shows why. And then if you talk to your HR people, if you have them, if you're large enough, they will say that employer branding is increasingly important in attracting the right people into the business. Of course, we can all get people to apply for a job, but are they the right people? Are they defined? Have they been inspired in the right way? And do they reflect our own values? Because if they do, they will be a much better workforce, and they will be the lifeblood moving forward. And that is what we want. Essentially, we want people who, right from square one, are committed, are like us in so many ways, who appreciate and buy into the brand. And that is the most important part. Of course, brand is made up of so many parts, but it's all about the emotional side of a business. So we may be able to articulate the growth in business that we're looking for from a figure perspective, but a lot of the time businesses aren't always very good at talking about the more emotional side of things. And that's what I want to talk about today. So Insight 101, in terms of brand strategy consultant, we can talk about the market, your positioning, your customer, etc., etc. But the focus today is about your brand vision and your brand values, which actually are the fundamentals of your brand anyway. That is what makes your brand. That is what people buy into. That is what people feel from your communications. That's what your people feel as well. So the core building blocks and the focus today. And it's the focus today because I think certainly now that lockdown is relaxing, we're still working remotely, and we're all on the Zoom call today, aren't we? But it's tough. It can be tough. And we need to ensure that our employees feel good, that our clients are supported, that we are able to continue. And we need those guidelines, really. We need to ensure that our people are feeling okay. So it's all about culture today and employee engagement, where I want to focus my conversation. And of course, at a later date, we can talk about the external bit, but it's the internal ramifications that are key for me today. And a lot of people think about brand and values to be quite fluffy, but actually there are a lot of businesses out there, even before lockdown, who are pushing the values agenda. You know, there are the likes of Unilever who are talking about gender equality and balance. You know, that's all about having a more satisfied, more balanced workforce. And there are the entrepreneurs who talk about the values-driven nature of their business and how employees will leave organisations if they don't feel that the vision and the values of a particular business reflect theirs. People are increasingly looking for purpose. That's what they want. They want some meaning in their role that they do 9 to 5, 9 to 6 every day. So it's very important that we think about the implications of the values and how that dictates our behaviours. Because ultimately, the end point is that it guides our customers, their decisions, and it guides our employees and their level of satisfaction. So it actually matters. So during lockdown, we've seen quite a few events, haven't we? And we've seen some winners and we've seen some losers from a brand perspective. And I would suggest that there are some wry smiles in the audience looking at these 3 logos today, because they all have one thing in common, don't they? They're probably considered to be the losers in the lockdown situation. And by that I mean Sports Direct and Wetherspoon really didn't put their employees front of mind from the very start, and were certainly with Wetherspoons, they sent out a video to 43,000 staff to say that they weren't going to be paid and to look for another job. Sports Direct were strong-arming their people to come in store and to work there continually, even though people were obviously quite scared of the situation. So that had a very negative knock-on effect, not only for customer and customer relations, but obviously we've seen a lot of that in the media. And then of course Virgin, which are very different. I mean, Virgin is known for being all about people, you know, incredibly good at promotion and marketing and having a vision, etc., etc. But they actually fell at the first post, didn't they? because if you remember, Richard Branson was there with his what was perceived to be a begging bowl, talking to government saying that he needed a bailout, when actually a few years previously he'd been criticising other businesses, other airlines for doing that. And what happened there from our perspective is that they have that vision, which I'll share with you in a minute. They do have strong values too, but they failed in times of trouble to actually access that, to stop, to think and ask themselves, what should we do in this situation? What do our values and what we've said in the past, what do they dictate that we need to do? When actually what they did do was a knee-jerk reaction and panicked. Because they're actually known for challenging the status quo, taking on the giants of the airline business and championing people and the planet. Disruption is their DNA, and their group's purpose is doing good business for good, apologies. Well, actually what we saw, that was the vision, but in reality we saw something very different, which was a backlash, which was bad PR, which was bad decisions probably on the part of Richard Branson and his senior leadership team. What he said was potentially very true. Obviously don't want to go into the ramifications of that, but there may be some reasons he wasn't able to stump up the money himself, etc., etc. But the way he did it was not the best way. And looking at how these businesses behaved actually shows the knock-on effect, that negative perception from consumers. And this is a study that was done very recently, looking at the likelihood that people would buy from Sports Direct, Wetherspoon and Virgin Atlantic as a result of what they've seen in the press. And you'll see with this circle here, that's around the 23rd of March when lockdown was enforced. And you see a dramatic drop for Wetherspoon, Sports Direct and Virgin in particular. Now, of course, we can all say, well, that will change, people forget, and some people will. Some people are driven by price and they will go back into Sports Direct straight away. But there will be other people who don't. And what's actually happened here is there are people who work for those organisations who will feel, wounded, perturbed by this, and deeply disappointed as well. And that, of course, will translate into how they work, how they deliver the service that they need to their end customer. So having a vision and values is one thing, but actually living them and using them in times of trouble is another. And they can seriously get you out of some trouble. It can dictate your decisions and your behaviours. So we're talking big blockbuster, global so far, aren't we? But at the end of the day, how does this relate to you in the audience? There are obviously a spectrum of different businesses. We've understood that around 40% of people think that their business is in excellent condition, and that's fantastic. And others who could do with a bit more work. I guess the question now is, what should you be thinking about as you go forward? And how can you make sure that you are in the best position possible to have a sustainable business moving forward? And having teams who, they may be remote still, but they're actually working, they're productive, they're as happy as they can be, they're energized, and you as leaders have the energy and the motivation and the tools to help you as well. Because let's face it, everybody feels tired, everybody feels low energy, everybody knows that there's no end in sight, and that this is the new normal, this is how it's going to be. And actually that takes some managing. So having some guidelines in place, thinking about your vision and your values, and taking a look back at what's happened over the 3 or 4 months is time well spent. So let's have a look at that. So the reason that it's really important to think about your vision, if you have one, to maybe look at it again, and if you don't, to think about putting that in place with your values, because it is the North Star that guides our actions. So it's your vision and organizational values which define how people should behave, are the basis of your company culture and how we do things around here. So it's actually a very good time to draw a line, to get some learning for what people's expectations have been, what their experience has been, and to insert that into the plans and the guidelines and the vision and values moving forward, so that you can maintain that unity, you can get that energy back, and you have the tools to help you guide your teams forward. So this is the second poll now. So we've talked about the state of your brand. I'd like to ask you now, before we move into the next section, Emma, if you could put that up, please. How well did your brand vision and values support you during lockdown? Option 1, it guided our decisions, our activities and our teams. 2, we think it helped us to maintain awareness within the market. 3, it made little difference and we didn't really refer to it. And 4, I'm not sure what you mean, how can it do that? So if you would like to cast your vote now, that would be very, very useful, and we'll take a quick look before we go into the next section. Emma, give a shout when you've got those. How are we doing, Emma?
We're almost there, just waiting for a couple more responses.
Don't think too hard. Just what springs to mind would be great. Okay.
There we go.
Brilliant. It guided our decisions, our activities and our teams. 81%, that's astonishing. That's really fantastic news. And we think it helped to maintain awareness within the market, 19%. So that, I would say, that is pretty good. That in fact, it has really helped benefit both you, your business and your staff to move you forward. That's really good. So at this point, I would ask, and this may be something that is less relevant to some of you now, how you feel the vision and values have lived up to the task, actually. Were they clear enough? Were there certain values which were no longer relevant or fit for purpose? Were your team members able to use that as a guide? Was it all clearly defined? Did they reflect in the behaviours of your people even though they were remote? Did it just essentially support you? Now, it sounds to me like there are a lot of people here who have been very successful in the way that they've managed lockdown, and that's great. For those who feel that it's certainly kept awareness going, but probably could have been even more use, then this will be incredibly relevant to you. At this point, I want to introduce a contact of mine, Mike Crook, who is the Managing Director of PracticeWeb. We've recently collaborated together and done a survey and a study and written some reports, and we have been featuring on podcasts recently, so we know each other very well. PracticeWeb is a marketing agency which works within the accounting sphere, but I wanted Mike to come along today and just talk about his experience during lockdown, because we had some good conversations about the vision and values of PracticeWeb and how they really did support Mike and his team during lockdown. So I thought you'd be interested to hear somebody else's story. Mike, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and hello, everybody else.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's start from the beginning. What was it that triggered you, first of all, to really sit down and think about your vision and values? Because I know that you did do that particular exercise and were very purposeful about it, weren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our reason for doing it is I've been MD of the business for about a year and a half to almost 2 years now. And when I sort of took over, it was with the purpose of setting out a bit of a change program for the company. So heading in a different direction, the market had changed, and part of my job was to work out what had changed and also how we could reposition the business. So as part of that, I needed to make sure that we had a strong vision, mission as a business, so that I could articulate it to the company, articulate it to the employees, articulate it to the board, and also then put that, I know today isn't about external, but we also then needed to be able to take that externally to market and be really clear about our proposition so that we could grow with real solid direction. You talked about the North Star a minute ago, which I totally subscribe to. I think, we just knew where we were going, and we could have those conversations internally. We knew who we were going after. We'd really sort of rounded down on those, ideal clients of ours. So that's the purpose of why we set it out, really.
Right. And I think just from the conversation we had, I think you were actually surprised at what the value that it brought, more surprised than you expected. Am I right?
Yeah. I guess especially when the pandemic hit, I suppose it was nice to have seen that we'd worked quite hard, almost to the point that it was a joke in our monthly meetings where I'd sort of bring up, this is who we're going after, this is our vision, this is what we're about. But actually it just kind of reinforced everything, so that there was real clarity on all of those things, what our purpose was, the vision. And I think that the nicest thing is people want to work for a company that's got a real purpose. Sadly, people don't get inspired by trying to make money for an organization. So you've kind of got to really give them that sense of leadership and understanding. And I suppose what was really comforting to me when, we were going through this horrendous ordeal as an organization and trying to work out, what we should do, the fact is that the sort of 1 week into the sort of having to work from home, we put a business meeting together, and it was really nice to show the values and our sort of vision and how to behave and all that sort of stuff just kind of was polarized. And it was like, actually everybody's kind of lived up to that, and it was really sort of quite heartwarming and slightly sort of semi-emotional, really, because you're like, well, I've worked all this hard stuff to try and pitch it to everybody, and everybody just did it. And when I went through the values on that meeting, I could just give really good examples every time. Like focus on our client was one of our values. Value your craft, believe it's possible, embrace change. All of those things kind of just hit us in the face quite quickly, but everybody dealt with it in an amazing way. And it just reinforced that, yep, we've recruited the right people. They're behaving in the right way. And I suppose also, when I can't, not that I'm listening to everybody's conversations, but we're a small office and you can hear what's going on and talking to clients and things like that. So actually I was probably safe in the knowledge, knowing that people are going to talk to our clients in the right way. They're not going to let their own internal frustrations of the situation come through. I know they're behaving in the right way. They're going to have the right type of conversation, and they're going to be there to support the client. And then internally, we can do our own sort of supporting our employees and talk about the hard times that they had. But they just behaved in the right way, which is amazing.
I seem to remember when we were talking as well, you said at one point, you were amazed that everybody just got it. And even during lockdown in the first few weeks where things were really difficult, everybody was supporting each other. They didn't need your support as much as they might have done if they didn't have that clarity. They got on and did it.
Yeah, what we could do is the fact that they knew obviously how to behave, because we've got our values and we've recruited the right people because of those. But equally, part of that internal process is to set key objectives. I'll set where the business is going and what the objectives are, but each and every single individual owns their own objectives, so they know where we're going, they know how to contribute. And I think it was that was also, you know, a welcomed sort of support, really, because everybody just knew what they needed to do. There wasn't any conversation about, oh, what shall I do? How do I do this? How do I contribute to the business? They knew what they needed to do. So therefore we could concentrate as a business to how to adapt our plan for the pandemic, what we needed to do. And I knew that when I went to the team as a management team, we'd go back to the business and say, here's what we're going to be doing. Because of our value of embracing change, I just knew that they would be accepting of it. They knew we had to do something. But what was really comforting is, whilst we're trying to work what that might be, I knew it's safe in the knowledge that they were going to get on with what they needed to do, support our clients, because they're accountants, so they were pretty critical at that point. So yeah, everybody just mucked in and did what they needed to do, and actually turned around, supported each other, not just with client work, but I guess emotionally as well, because it's been incredibly tough for everybody. And I think there hasn't been, you know, a single team member that's had a wobble during this process. You know, we sort of turned into counsellors, but not just management team, but everybody, you know, trying to counsel and coach each other through it. And that was really strong. I think it's made us even stronger as a collective sort of team of 20, and bonded quite well over that.
That's great, Mike. Thank you very much. And I'll bring you back for any questions at the end, but thank you very much for that. That's brilliant. So I've actually had quite a few conversations in lots of different forums recently. And one of the key questions, certainly within a food and beverage forum that I was in, was, you know, how are we going to carry on as leaders? How are we going to carry on and move beyond lockdown? And how are we going to continue to lead our teams remotely? What can we do to keep them on track? How do we keep this energy going? And how do I keep my energy going as well? And of course, vision and values aren't the answer to everything, but they do help you enormously if you get it right. And they can help in multiple ways. And I think Mike and I could have spoken for a long time, but it's helped him certainly in his recruitment. So having the right people from day one, ensuring that people know what their expected behaviours are, giving structure for review, certainly one-to-one or even team, giving the team direction and a sense of unity so they actually look after each other as well. And of course that leads to culture, which is all about top up, bottom down as well. So bringing that cohesion together, whether you're remote or not. So very, very important. So the next 90 days then, I think will be an interesting time as things become more relaxed. Obviously, we have people in the audience here who have an excellent sense of brand and what their business is about, and they also feel that that helped them really well over the period. So there are also other people who probably have a little bit of work to do and are not quite as far on the journey. So let's think about the next 90 days for both of those scenarios. So Insight 101, what we tend to advise, certainly at the moment, is to look at the 3 months coming up and look at that in 3 phases. So review, obviously, to understand your experiences, how team members have experienced lockdown and what their thoughts are now. To refresh, and I think that's obviously if you already have your vision and values at hand, then it's to look at it to see whether it's still fit for purpose or whether it needs changing. And if you don't have that work done, then it's about starting to commit something to paper. And then of course relaunching, and that is about putting it out there, documenting it, but also thinking about how that is maintained. So what are the behaviours? What are we going to expect from our people? How will meetings happen? What will they expect to see, hear, feel, etc., etc. So from a review perspective, if you feel that you still need some work to do, then for me, my core recommendation would be to audit your team at an individual and a collective level. Talk to them about their experience. Talk to them about what they've seen, what they've felt, the values that they've seen come to the fore, both in themselves, in you as a leader, and their colleagues. What's worked, what hasn't? What did they experience? What did they feel? But also, what have they learned about lockdown, and what do they want to see more of moving forward? And that is all great meat for you to begin to think about the values and the vision going forward, because they should be able to tell you what they would like to see, because they've been through a very different experience. We've all been through this experience together. So capturing that learning and capturing that sentiment is great. And from a business that is a bit more brand developed, then talk to your teams and say, how has this worked for you? Does it still resonate? Does this still work? Are there tweaks to be made? Are there things that no longer work but should be optimized? Again, commit both of that to paper, get it written down, and to start thinking about what that means. What's it going to look like now? And then, of course, the relaunch for both. If you don't have a developed brand, or you do, then it's to think about, so now that we have made these tweaks, or now we have committed this to paper, what do those behaviours look like moving forward? And talk about the processes, talk about the meetings, the calls, the Zoom calls, what people are expecting to see from their colleagues, from you as a leader, and from themselves. So document it. And I think from having done this work myself many times, I have some recommendations for how you should be doing this, and the key watch-outs really. And for me, that's all about, first of all, not everybody can talk about their emotions and their feelings, and they don't feel comfortable doing that. They don't expect that within an organisation. But I think now is the time to do that, and to talk to them about why you want to do this, why you want to get a renewed sense of culture, unity within the team, etc., etc. So talk to them up front about doing it. And then, of course, build a process in so that everybody is heard and you genuinely listen to them. There is nothing worse than being asked a question and then not listened to. So make sure that you are serious about that. Senior leadership. I have been in so many organisations as a leader myself where the work has been done and then put on the shelf, and it just hasn't been taken seriously. So if you're going to do it, then you really need to lead and show by example that you're serious, and that it becomes ingrained into your behaviours and your language moving forward. Obviously embed that by defining behaviours, so people don't necessarily know what to do with values, so start to make it tangible for them. Be consistent, insert that into everything that you do, certainly objectives annually, maybe for your conversations on a weekly, monthly basis as well, so that you can begin to measure and have a structure for conversation too. And use it not only for those moments in time, but every day as guardrails. And I'd suggest that if Richard Branson had thought about that a little bit more carefully, for example, then he might have sat back and said, what does Virgin do? What should they do? And I think he would probably have netted out at a slightly different outcome. And then finally, pre and post measurement. So have the time to measure sentiment at the moment, how people are feeling, how connected they feel as a team, how connected they feel to the business, and ensure that as you go forward, that you measure that to see where you're going and how you're progressing. So just a few recommendations for you to think about, a few things, tweaking that you can do in the next 90 days or so if you think that that would value your business. And now we've got to a point where we've come up to around 30 minutes. So have we got any questions for myself? And I'll bring Mike back as well, because he's obviously lived this experience too. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Philippa. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go through the chat box. I think what we've had is some comments in the chat box here, so I'm just going to go through them. Angela Hicks, who's CEO of the North Somerset Enterprise Agency, one of the partners of our series, has just mentioned that actually the values have really helped them pull together as a team really well. So that's a good example of living through that.
Yeah.
Emma Tate has spoken around incorporating vision, values, brand into the SWOT analysis review of a business, which is really important. And Ian Porter and Tracy Carter have just talked about the importance of partnerships as well, and having fantastic partners around you that really support where you're going with this agenda.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important. That's something that I've talked about a lot in the past, which is it's not just your people, it's your suppliers and partnerships outside as well, because, you know, we all have choices to make, and we all want to be working with people that we get on with and that we respect, etc. So it's incredibly important to have that ecosystem, really, where, you know, you're like-minded and you're looking for the same things out of that business partnership. So I couldn't agree more. Okay.
And I do have a question, if you don't mind me asking one, Philippa. And it's just, I suppose it's around the employee engagement aspect. And I know when you gave us your 90-day, your recommendations for the 90 days, you put the first one there around telling your employees why you're doing this, and so that, which is really useful. I suppose in your experience, you know, have you ever had clients that have perhaps got that wrong, and perhaps haven't engaged? Because and how do they deal with that, really? Because my view is that, you know, we can really create fantastic brands and visions, but actually, as Mike quite clearly pointed out in his example, it's around the workforce living it, really, to make it come alive, especially for the staff and the customers. So yeah, I suppose in your experience, any experience of working with clients where perhaps that hasn't gone to plan, and how that's been dealt with?
Yeah, well, I think I have lots of examples, not just clients actually, but organisations where I've worked before. And I think the overall theme and the recurring theme is that a business decides to take on this exercise, but doesn't really talk about why they're doing it. And it just feels like an exercise that's a tick box. So what they don't do is, it's all about communication. And there are lots of leaders here who I'm sure will be nodding, but you need to communicate what you're doing, why you're doing, and re-communicate it. And I think actually getting people to take a sense of ownership is critical, and including them in those conversations, and not including them too late where they feel like it's a done deal as well. So it's incorporating them, making sure that they feel ownership, and then of course coming out the other side and saying, so what are we going to do with this now? Because I've experienced many times where, you know, there's a beautiful presentation which is massive, gorgeous, everybody presents it out, but nobody then picks it up, and so it just becomes a gorgeous presentation and people sort of go back to their day job. And I think when it works well, it should feel really hard work. You know, the clients I've spoken to, it has to be really hard work, and it has to feel like every time you're questioning yourself and you're thinking, what is the right thing to do? I need to talk to, you know, my staff and my teams, etc., and I've got to include them. It's hard work to get it right, actually. But if you feel like it is quite hard work, then you're probably doing a great job. So it's people who don't realise the significance of asking somebody their opinion and then not listening, and then not communicating out what they're doing at every situation, which is a problem. And of course, there are lots of senior people who write a few words and then don't stick to it themselves. That is the biggest no-no. If you don't live and breathe it, the first time you don't show that, everybody else will throw it out of the window themselves.
Yeah, we just had a comment from Sue Shillabir, who's a president of Weston Chamber of Commerce, just making that point. Actually, it's you know, it's okay creating this. It's far more than just a logo. It does require that internal work to make it really come alive. And you made a good point regarding constant communication as well, Philippa. Yeah, that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think those people who are the most successful leaders often say that they feel like they've said something several times and they're bored to death of it. But actually, we're all different. We all process information differently. And it's actually that consistency that gets the message through eventually. So when you're thinking you've said it too much, probably say it again.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I feel like I was a broken record every, especially early days. It was just constantly, every monthly meeting we'd have, it's the same, same 4 slides, who we're going after, who we are, but and also trying to inject the same level of passion as well into every time you talk about it, because if you're the sort of flippant about it and quickly whip through the slides, people will pick up on that, and that will be again, oh well, does he really care about it anymore? And I guess that's I know you've said communication, which is incredibly important. And now we put things, obviously we're not in the office now, but we put things on the walls that just kind of reinforce that, and we talk about it. And in our one-to-ones with senior managers and managers, they talk about the values and our vision, and then the objectives and all of those things. So every little moment of a structured meeting is geared around those, but also they're trying to do the informals by, or saying thanks very much, I really valued your craft at that point, which is one of our values, or you really focused in on the client there. So trying to drop in, that doesn't feel forced, but trying to drop in some of those values into everyday conversations that also feels like it's in that informal sort of reinforcement as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. There's a real link to leadership here as well, isn't there? It's really important. And Philippa's kindly given her contact details there, because I'm sure there'll be many other conversations. I'm also aware that there's people on the call today who perhaps work in financial services or other sectors, and they obviously have a client base in the same way that the college do, actually. So this is really useful insights for us to share with our clients as well. So Philippa's details are on there, and I will be copying in Philippa when I email you all the recording of this session today. But that was really useful. Thank you very much, Philippa.
You're very welcome, and thank you, Mike, for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, as well. Yes, for your time, and it's been really good to go through this. Philippa, if you wouldn't mind, just stop sharing your screen, and I can then close, and that'll give you a chance to look at the chat box, which I know is difficult when you're doing both, and just respond to some of the positive comments that are coming through. And at this point, I'll just move to the point where I start to close the session. Hopefully you can all see that on the screen there. So yes, I mean, in terms of Weston College, I talked about our COVID recovery hub and what we're doing at the moment. I'm just aware that many employers might need an extra pair of hands in the coming months and into next year. So please do bear in mind that Weston College and other local education providers across the country have a student resource looking for some experience, but also can be a valuable resource for your business. So please do take that opportunity and get in contact with the team there. Also, in terms of how we're building for the future, I'm just getting the impression, certainly from our client base, that actually we are looking to the future now, and business is starting to pick up. And there are still challenging times, but there are real signs of optimism as we're moving through this period. And I'm going to touch on our session next week, which will focus on apprenticeships. But in terms of branding and leadership and technology and how we communicate branding, apprenticeships have a key role to play in rebuilding. And the college offers apprenticeships in anything from marketing to digital technology, data analytics, which is really important in these days with analysing how our customers are interacting with us, leadership and management, and plenty others. So please do get in contact with us or join our session next week, which will actually explain all of this. You might have seen recently the Chancellor announced some new funding incentives for employers, £1,000 for a trainee, £2,000 for an apprentice 16 to 24 years old, or £1,000 for an apprentice aged 25 plus. And this applies for businesses that recruit an apprentice between August and December this year. And you can see our website there for more information. But next week, we will be focusing on this agenda, on apprenticeships. We're going to talk about how we can maximize apprenticeships for your business. We're going to bust through all the myths, and we're going to interview a few people as well. A lively and informative session. We are going to hear from Avon Fire and Rescue, how they have embraced the apprenticeship levy to upskill their leadership team. We're going to hear a live interview with Emily Taylor, who's an apprentice that works with us at the college, who has progressed, and we'll hear about her experience of why she chose an apprenticeship and how she's gone on to progress in her role since then. We'll talk about the free recruitment support available. We'll also hear from Future Stars Coaching, who, due to expansion, have actually been recruiting apprentices through COVID virtually. So that's been interesting for them. So they're going to share their insights. And we're also going to give you a bit of an insight into our own Weston College apprenticeship program for apprentices that actually are employed by Weston College, not just trained by us, because we do practice what we preach. So we will be talking about our Future Talent program. So we've got a really lively session, another lively session booked for you next week. So I'll email details out to that. So if you or any of your clients want to join us next week, just use the Eventbrite booking link, or do share it as well, because we've had an incredible response to this series. And we're nearly at the end, so it'd be good to go out with a bang. But certainly with the new funding announcements, we're going to get through all that next week and hear from a few different people, including Fire Service and Future Stars, Emily, chaired by our team. So that's it from us today. My thanks to Philippa for being our guest speaker. A really interesting and engaging talk, something that applies to all employers and business owners and managers. My thanks to Mike for joining us as well, to provide his perspective on living through his brand through COVID and how his team have responded. And I'd also like to thank all of you who have joined us today, because the Wednesday working lunch is only as good as our engagement and participation. And finally, just to our event partners, Western Chamber of Commerce and the North Somerset Enterprise Agency. That's it from us. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.